All right. Welcome back, Internet people. Just to give you a clarification of what's going on, this is a reconstitution of episode 42 of Kenter at Your Own Risk with Kent, Kevin, and Chris. We will be going over our most overrated movies, at least a top 5 list, although like a 67 list for Kent. But we are reconstituting this from some technical difficulties that we had, so it might not be as engaging as our typical podcast, and I'm going to forever regret that you guys will not be able to hear our original 42, but that's fine. That's fine. Anyways, we're back. This is probably going to throw a little bit of a twist into 43, since we're going to be recording it after we've done 43 already, so just bear with us for these next two podcasts, and when we get back to 44 in June, talking about terrible twos in horror movies, we'll be back on track. But I'm doing okay. Kent and Kevin, how are you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, I'm good. I just to sum up the quote unquote the original 42, we all liked the movies that we got suggested, and what was it, Chris? You said that Nightbreed is now coming out on 4K, right?
Yeah, I was laughing because we talked about Nightbreed in OG 42, and then I think we talked about it a little bit in OG 43.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, I saw that they're doing a re-release of a 4K version of the director's cut with, like, all the bells and whistles. And I was just like, wow, 3 months in a row that we've been talking about Nightbreed. What are the odds? But
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Deserves it. For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so long story short, just OG42. If you're into weird, crazy shit, watch Possession. If you're into, I'd say vintage 90s horror from Clive Barker, watch Nightbreed. And if you're into pretty well done blaxploitation horror, watch Blacula.
Yeah.
Agree.
Yeah, they're all fun in their own very weird. There was no common thread amongst those movies, but they were all good and fun.
All right, so I don't remember what order we did this in last time, but who wants to go first for tonight?
I'll go.
Okay. Kevin will be talking about his top 5 overrated movies.
All right, so I'll just get into it. Also, actually, my criteria for overrated films were movies that were that just had a lot of hype around it, whether critically, audience-wise, horror community, or made a bunch of money at the box office. Very financially successful. And my number 5 is Insidious from 2010, which has 66% on Rotten Tomatoes critics and 62 audience score, 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb, and 3.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd. The critics' consensus on Rotten Tomatoes for Insidious is, aside from a shaky final act, Insidious is a very scary and very fun haunted house thrill ride. Directed by James Wan and written by Lee Wannell. The two that brought us up before this. When this came out, I do remember from word of mouth that it was supposed to be legitimately scary. While the beginning does have a decent amount of tension, it kind of gets cheesy really quick and continues on until it just is kind of weird. And not in necessarily the way that I like movies weird. Some of the dialogue, performances, and direction has its moments. I do not believe it's overall above average B-cheese horror movie. It's kind of fun in part, but it is kind of lame in other parts. I do think it shows promise to James Wan's future directorial efforts with movies like The Conjuring and *Malignant*. Specifically, that this felt like it is more, I don't know, it's kind of barely passable. I didn't really find it scary, uh, and it's not very memorable, except for, maybe Lin Shaye and Rose Byrne. But that is my number 5. What do you guys think? Overrated, underrated, perfectly rated?
Go ahead, Kent.
Oh, I would have actually included this in my list, but I mean that would have made it 68 movies instead of 67, and I thought, whoa, too much. With that being said, it's a movie that thrives too much. It relies too much on the jump scare rather than the storytelling element. The acting performances I quite like. Overall, I quite like it. I just hate the dependency on the jump scare to the point where, it lost its luster by like the last half hour. I really kind of zone out. I've tried watching this 3 times and I can't tell you a damn thing that happens that last half hour. I'm guessing Tiny Tim's Tiptoe Through the Tulips plays at some point, and that's best I can really recollect.
All right, so at this point in our career of working together, I'm sure Kent is getting tired of hearing certain stories over and over and over again. And I mean, since this is just coming a couple weeks after the last time we told this, Kevin probably will too. But I remember the first night I watched Insidious. I was raiding in an MMO, and my wife was sitting on the couch. She was straight up just watching it, and I was watching it, like out of the corner of my eye. And I remember when we started the movie, she was sitting there by herself. Like 30 minutes in, she had a blanket in her lap. And then just, like, I kept looking over my shoulder, and the further and further the movie went, the further and further the blanket was, until right at the ending, she had it, like, literally, like, up underneath her glasses, covering, like, her nose and her mouth and the rest of her body. I really like the Insidious movies. One thing I didn't bring up the last time we talked about this is I like the whole premise of the further, the astral projection, rather than it just being dealing with ghosts in a haunted house. I know you guys are both pretty big Stephen King fans too. Did you guys ever read 4 Past Midnight?
Nay.
Kevin?
Was that short stories?
That was the one. It was 4 novellas. Yeah. It was the one with Secret Window, Secret Garden, The Langoliers, The Library Policeman, and then one called The Sundog.
Oh yeah, I think I only read the ones they had movies for. So I read the Langoliers, and
the premise from The Sundog really reminds me a lot of what they did with the end of Insidious, with the whole, like, every time you see a picture, something is getting closer and closer to somebody. So I would be very interested to hear if Leigh Whannell, had read that story and took that portion, with the crazy old lady getting closer to Patrick Wilson, in every photo as a child. But yeah, there were, to be completely fair, there were a lot of jump scares. A lot of shit doesn't get explained until the second movie. And one of the things I disliked about 3 and 4 were how they were both prequels in order to justify having Lin Shaye in them. Although I think she's really good in this part. Like, it's fucking perfect for her. And again, just be interested to see, because almost a month to today, we're getting Insidious, not Insidious 5, but Insidious the Red Door, which is the 5th one in the series. Yeah, I like a lot of James Wan stuff. Like, I don't necessarily know if I'd put Malignant up there, but I think if you're looking at like a relatively like a trio of stuff, I would put Sinister and the Conjuring up above this. But I think this is easily a third best spooky, haunting, demon, blah, 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 from about that 3-year period of time, between 2010 to 2012. Anyways, that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I still need to watch Insidious too. So, Okay, so I'm going to go on to number 4. Terrifier 2 from 2022. Rotten Tomatoes, critics 85%, audience 80%, IMDb 6.2 out of 10, and Letterboxd 3 out of 5. With written and directed by Damien Leon, and its box office was $15.1 million on a $250,000 budget. Though it does deliver buckets of blood and adds a full hour to its runtime compared to the original, I don't see it as anything more than a movie you watch with your buddies over beers. At 2 hours and 20 minutes, it kind of overplays its hand, where the novelty of the Halloween store costume shop horror wears thin, and the shock value isn't really so shocking anymore. It is fun and worth a watch, and I do like it, and I actually think I do get it. I just don't see it as the second coming of Pennywise, Michael Myers, or Freddy Krueger. And this one is mostly like the horror community, like, found this and loves it, and I don't know, it's just very B movie. It is very, very gory, and I get it because we don't get as many of movies like that, but it is, yeah, I don't think it does compare in some ways. Storyline wise, it's better than the first one, but it adds so much time to do it. But I think the first one had better scares, or just like better gags, I guess we'd say. I don't think there's anything better than the song "The Woman in Half" thing that, which is from the first one. I don't think the second one has anything on that. So, did you guys see Terrifier 2 yet?
Yeah, to kickstart this again, even though it's only been a couple weeks, I still have not seen it, so I don't really have too much to add to the discussion for this one.
See, this all starts fucking making sense now. This is what happened. I think I bitched at Kevin last time, and Kevin intentionally, maliciously, just didn't save it. He didn't want to hear me yell at him over this transgression of putting Terrifier 2 on this list. And although I will agree that it was too long, I mean, horror movies really shouldn't ever go past 2 hours unless it's kind of almost got to be like a horror epic, and there's nothing about Terrifier or any aspect of Terrifier that's, of the, The Shining or, like a really masterpiece. Terrifier 2 is never going to be called a masterpiece, I don't think. With that being said, this was like 100% fan service, and I guess that's why I don't want to call it overrated. If anything, I would call Terrifier 1 overrated, and I would say All Hallows Eve 1 is the best of the group, but the segment with Art the Clown is only like 25 minutes long, but it's still really, 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 really good. But Terrifier 2 is probably like the second best of the... I say the trio. I think there was actually a short film before All Hallows Eve that first introduced Art the Clown, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know. I didn't really do all the research because, I forgot to. But anyways, I'm not angry with Kevin. I'm just disappointed with Kevin over this.
Yeah, the only...
I think I'll leave it at that.
I don't know. Yeah, okay, we'll just leave it at that. No, but I do understand why people like love it, and I do feel like that it's probably so long just because they had so much fun doing it, and they probably didn't know that they would ever be allowed to make another one. So
I wonder how much they actually filmed? If they had did they just not cut anything that they filmed, or did they film even even a ton more that we didn't see? I'm genuinely curious, what the editing process was for
I just feel like,
once again, because
took all the money. He's like, I'm gonna spend every cent and make this as long as I possibly can, gushing blood and shoving mashed potatoes into shotgun holes.
Would you say though that this has bought what was it, Damien Leone? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's bought them like at least
the hype from
two more
this actually.
sequels. Like
It's getting the first one is getting released in
I think they could make a shitty movie.
Actual theatrical run that it didn't get the first time. So it's getting and that's probably going to be just in time for Halloween, and it'll probably be even more overhyped in another year. Yeah, I'm just predicting the overhypeness of this movie.
We'll probably get like Terrifier 3 next year.
Oh, I bet.
Terrifier 3 is in pre-production.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so moving on. Number 3, Prey. 2022. Directed by Dan Trachtenberg, written by Patrick Asen. Critics on Rotten Tomatoes, 93%. Audience, 73%. IMDb, 7.1 out of 10. And Letterboxd, 3.6 out of 5. It did not get a theatrical release, but on a budget of $65 million, it was the most watched across all platforms the week of August 12th, 2022. While I do think it is a good movie, I just don't think it's the best one since the original. When this came out, it was highly praised by critics and discussed by the internet and people that I know on Facebook. It was one of the movies that, like, everyone, I don't know, people that I know see make posts all the time were posting about Prey. I did appreciate it more the second time watching it, but I think because going in, I had my expectations lowered. I get that it's sci-fi, but I thought for the time period it portrays, it was just a little CGI heavy. I didn't really like the Predator design, but I do get what they were going for. I get that no two Predators look alike, and maybe the bar for the Predator movies was just set so far low after Shane Black's The Predator, which I still have not seen. And I do want to see. Everyone was blown away by this Apocalypto meets the Predator in this like mixed bag of genre films. All in all, it's a good movie. I just am not totally blown away by it, and I, might think that Alien versus Predator Requiem is I think I like that a little bit more than Prey. But all right, that's what I got on Prey. That's what I got on Prey.
Oh, I love it when we do something over again and new stuff comes to light, putting Alien versus Prey.
It was brought up later on, and I regret not speaking of.
Yeah, he left that out last time.
It was brought up later on, and I regret
That's big words right there. You want to go first, Kent?
No, have at it.
I think this was one of the ones that we had the most discussion about last time. I really enjoyed Prey. I'll be much more succinct. I thought it was a pretty good example of doing a female empowerment role in a way that works, especially in a horror movie heroine kind of situation. You see this woman practicing, trying, failing. It's not like she's a Mary Sue where she automatically is the strongest, the smartest, the best fighter, the best tracker, succeeds at everything. I get where you're coming from with the design of the Predator. Like, the one thing I'll say for that too is you never really get a great look at the Predator in this one. There's never like a full-on moment where you're seeing him where he's not obscured by darkness or fog, or having his helmet on, unlike like the final showdowns with Arnie or Danny Glover. And the one thing I'll say is I fucking love Predator 2, so I think that tops Predator 1 in my opinion. But I'll keep it shorter than last time. Go ahead, Kent.
Yeah, I'm sitting here struggling to really add much new to the conversation, but I'm so happy that Kevin brought up Alien versus Predator Requiem because it's a terrible movie. And I just want to go on the record saying that it's a terrible fucking movie that makes me sad. And it makes me even sadder that I've watched it twice. But, it's weird. I don't think I actually own Alien vs. Predator Requiem on Vudu. Out of the hundreds of horror movies, I think I might be able to proudly say I don't own that yet. I mean, I will probably by the end of the year, but right now, in this very moment, I can proudly say I do not own it. Anyway, Prey, I really liked it. I think I regaled you guys with the story that I showed my wife this, last month, and I'm like, yeah, this is a Predator movie, and she didn't believe me until, however long into the movie when you first see the Predator, she's like, oh, you're fucking telling the truth. I'm like, yeah, like, why wouldn't you think that? And then, naturally it was like, well, because you lie to me all the time, and, she's right, but, I don't lie about horror too often, unless I try to mislead, saying, obviously it's this person that's the killer, and clearly it's not. I don't know. I do like to mislead. I can't lie, but I wouldn't lie about Prey because I've really, really enjoyed Prey. I don't necessarily know if it belongs on this list because out of all the Predator movies, this is my second favorite Predator movie. So. Yeah, someday if we're doing this like in 13 years and we are running low on ideas and we do a Predator franchise, I'm sure we will have vastly different numbers.
Deal.
That could be interesting.
Okay.
In 13 years.
All right, moving on.
For show.
My number 2 is Mandy, 2018, directed by Panos Cosmatos, written by Aaron Stewart on, and Panos Cosmatos. The critics gave it Rotten Tomato 90%, audience score 67, IMDb 6.5 out of 10, and Letterboxd 3.6 out of 5. Box office 1.7 million on a budget of 6 million. I really like this movie. This is kind of the movie that I put on there that I like. I do think it's overrated. I don't see it as a masterpiece that people do. My friend Matt loves this movie. He says it's like his top 5 film of all time movies. I like the retro 1983 vibe mixed with like the acid art house style. My third time watching it, I do like it more and more, so maybe it will get there, but for now it feels too long. The first hour has a great pace of suspense, and it gives me crazy anxiety. The second half doesn't deliver the Road Warrior meets Charles Bronson revenge film. It kind of sets itself up to be. It takes so long to get to the end, I kind of lose my attention by the time it gets to the last kill or even the Richard Brake scene. I think maybe the comparisons to Lynch hurt it more, at least for me, because it's not really all that either. I feel like I should love this movie with the LSD cult and the bathtub crank version of the Cenobites in it, but overall, the movie is called Mandy, and she is played by Andrea Riseborough, who is terrific. And once she isn't really in the movie anymore, I kind of struggle to stay interested. It's good. It's kind of cool. Really good, but maybe not great. Even compared to some of Nicolas Cage's other misfires. So, but it has a really cool aesthetic. It just doesn't kind of hold all the way there. Though this time I kind of think I do understand the ending, but I won't go into that because this isn't really like meant to like deep dive it. But did you guys get a chance to see this?
I still haven't got a chance to watch it, so unfortunately,
yeah, it's on Tubi,
again,
and I would suggest not watch it on Tubi because it kind of would totally mess up the pace of this movie. But yeah, I don't think it's on anything else at the moment.
I might have it on Vudu. I think I do. I think I have Mandy and what was it, The Color Out of Space is like a 2-pack, probably labeled stupidly in Vudu because anytime you buy like multiple movies, like they don't list them individually, and sometimes they're under really weird names that you wouldn't think of, like Universal Horror Collection, and it's like
The Wolfman.
Fucking Predator and Alien, or I don't know, just using weird examples here, but it just throws everything out of whack when you try and do alphabetical order here. With that being said, I'm going to agree with you because I had heard all the hype about Mandy, and it just didn't hit in a way that met the hype for me. What is interesting, because I can't add too much more, is that I recently watched the Showtime miniseries Waco, and Andrea Riseborough, or however you pronounce her name, she was in it, and she was so much better in the Waco miniseries than she was in Mandy, and I thought she was the best part of Mandy, but I really liked her performance in Waco, and even though it's really not, like, it's not a horror, it was still really, really good with some awesome
Michael Shannon,
performances with
Taylor Kitsch. Yeah.
I can't think of people right now, but John Leguizamo. Yeah, Taylor Kitsch really, really, really surprised me with how good he was in it. Michael Shannon's consistently great, and John Leguizamo, I think, actually got nominated for an Emmy or some shit for his performance. And I normally pick on Leguizamo, but I thought he did good. Rory Culkin was also in it and really good. Just gonna throw that out there. If you have Showtime and you got 4.5 hours to kill, it's a pretty damn interesting watch. But aside from
I'll
that,
take
I'm
it.
not adding much to the Mandy conversation. I
will add that the Waco Aftermath is really good too. It's more of the courthouse drama thing. Giovanni Ribisi's in it, and John Leguizamo's in it, and Michael Shannon playing the characters from the first season. So,
yeah, I plan on watching it. Not this coming. Yeah, maybe it is this next weekend. Yeah, I think it's this coming weekend. I plan on watching it. So, yeah, I'm excited to give it a whirl because I don't think I'm keeping Showtime for much longer, and I'm just trying to get through the handful of things that.
All right.
I really,
okay. Well,
really
we'll move on to my number one overrated movie, The Last House on the Left, 1972, directed by Wes Craven and written by Wes Craven. Rotten Tomatoes 63%, critics, audience 50%, IMDb 5.9, Letterboxd 3, and the box office was $3.1 million on a $90,000 budget. And though this one doesn't have the greatest ratings, but its legacy for exploitation horror, and I'd say the word of mouth on this, at least when I was a teenager and in my early 20s growing up, kind of set this up to be something that just didn't work out for me, or it just doesn't work for me. It is intense, scary, and in parts really uncomfortable, but the other parts are they're silly, campy, and just kind of stupid. This is Wes Craven's directorial debut, and I feel that is more the reason for its legacy status than the movie itself. There are a lot of good ideas, but overall are poorly executed. The movie cuts from an intense rape scene to a scene of just bumbling cops going down some dirt road. It looks like it's a blooper reel from the Dukes of Hazzards. It's just nonsensical. For what it is, it's okay overall, I think, but just not the terror classic that I think the horror community gives us credit for. Yeah, the bad guys are really bad, and the cops are idiots and useless in this. I get it, but the film is overall just all over the place, and it just kind of never keeps its footing. Kind of like the really bad booby traps that the parents set up in the end. But yeah, Last House on the Left. Was this on lots of your movie lists, Kent?
On regarding it being on the list, thankfully I was already at the M's. So looking at Last House, out of the 11 list, it appeared 3 times at 32, 41, and 75, which is the 32 and 41 especially are way higher than I would never consider. I wouldn't consider this even top 100. But if somebody says it's their 75th favorite horror movie, okay, I'm not going to begrudge that. But 32nd, you ain't been. What have you watched? 33 horror movies? Like what the fuck? So no. Like it was a really good start, especially for its time frame. I think last time I even made mention that I Spit on Your Grave was a better film that was in a similar vein. Even though it was more graphic, it had a better story. The acting seemed better. A lot of things about it was just better. I'm grateful that this movie exists, but early Wes Craven is not. It doesn't hold up that well. I mean, if you look at The Hills Have Eyes, it's pretty damn cheesy by today's standards. I mean, yeah, I know the original Nightmare on Elm Street's a little cheesy, but at least it still it holds up. Whereas some of early Wes Craven stuff just doesn't. I don't think it holds up as well as people want to paint it, I guess. So I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree that Last House on the Left is overrated, and shame on whoever ranked it 32nd. That's what I got.
I would agree with both of you. This is a good choice, Kevin. And Kent, I agree with you, too, that I Spit on Your Grave is a much better version of like the same kind of revenge genre horror movie, blah, blah, blah. It just didn't come up a lot in the stuff I was looking up, but I routinely see this as like one of the best horror movies of all time. Nice. On top 100 lists. So yeah, really good choice, Kevin. All right, Kent, you want me to go next?
Yeah.
All right. So to again hit up what Kevin was saying, my criteria was based on a couple of things. Part of it is ephemeral, perception, not necessarily lists, but how I generally hear people talk about the movie. Part of it is based on its rating that it gets, and I pulled from IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes, and then part of it was based upon the box office take based upon its budget. It didn't work straight across for all of them. Like my number one was a kind of a budgetary failure compared to what its box office take was. But I always hear it talked about being highly rated. And to put it in perspective, my number one underrated movie was The Exorcist 3, which only had a 56% Rotten Tomatoes rating and a 6.5 IMDb rating. And that is worse than all but one of these on the list. So to go into it, my number 5 most overrated horror movie was The Purge. That came out in, what was it, 2013. So it made $91.2 million on a budget of $3 million. It's only got a 36% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 5.1 on IMDb. Long story short, it's a really interesting concept. Which they went on to do really well in The Purge, Anarchy, and The Purge Election Day, and then kind of started falling away from there again. But the execution just didn't hold up great in the first one. Some of the story choices towards the end don't make sense. Some of the story choices towards the beginning don't make sense. And I think probably the most disappointing thing about it was this was the first thing that Ethan Hawke did right after Sinister, which is probably one of my all-time top 3 favorite horror movies. So I mean, that's basically it. I could go on longer, but why bother talking more about something that I find underwhelming?
Yeah.
You can go ahead, Kent.
It's weird. Hell, I don't even know if we could ever make a podcast out of it because there's so few examples. If I stop stumbling over my fucking words here, there's so few examples of franchises where the original is arguably one of the worst. But Purge is like this rare exception where parts 2, 3, and 4 all exceed it, and the only saving grace is that the final Purge exists, and damn, that movie fucking sucked. But just a lot of logical gaps in the movie. Like, you could see the vision, but I don't know. It almost feels like when you watch The Purge, do you sometimes get the feeling that more than one person was at the helm of writing it, and it just kind of got mixed up a little bit, Chris?
You know, it's a Blumhouse, whatever movie. And,
it's Jason Blum, but it's Blumhouse, I think.
Yeah, there we go.
Like a bum house.
And looking at like the credit for the writer, I don't know. I mean, I could definitely see it being more along the lines that the Purge Anarchy and the Purge Election Year were the outriders, because like this guy wrote all of the Purge stuff, and he did the screenplay for Assault on Precinct 13, which I thought was a pretty decent remake, but again, it wasn't original. You know, you're building off something that fucking John Carpenter already did, so you have a pretty good basis point. But then I'm looking like Skinwalkers, some of the other, no. So I would rather err on the side of saying the good ones are probably the anomaly. And yeah, I could definitely see this as being something where there was like studio interference.
Yeah, I probably should have said that.
Or maybe
Michael Bay was a producer too.
Maybe it was that there was not enough studio interference to get this guy on the right track.
Right, sometimes you need to have somebody rein you in.
Yeah.
You do, and it seemed like there was almost like two paths that were running parallel, and then there was like some divergence, just enough where it didn't quite all come together, and you were just sitting there pulling your hair out, and here I am now, hairless, and I blame The Purge. That's what I have to offer.
Well, I'm not going to blame The Purge for all of my problems, but it was okay. But it doesn't come together. There's so much potential, and it just goes off the rails. And I feel like the twist that they were trying to pull, that they did pull, just didn't work for the movie. You know, I'm just gonna say it if anyone has seen it, but like the neighbors thing, just seemed kind of like cheesy, like as intense as the middle part of the movie is, and kind of like I guess maybe the tension and maybe the mystery of the first time watching The Purge of what's actually really going to happen with a fan of like The Running Man or Series 7, which is like a really cool, like, it's kind of like a reality show, or they draw names, you know, or like, you know, the Hunger Games. But yeah, it's okay, but I was kind of hoping it would be a little bit better, with all of the hype around it. But having read the Richard Bachman Running Man, that was always kind of my favorite way, I don't know, like idea of like these kinds of movies. So everything's kind of, and even the movie Running Man is, you know, second place to that.
It's
Kevin, if you like
crazy
that
and
type
over the
of
top.
stuff,
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Like,
I love it. Everyone's killing each other in a city. Like that. Yeah, sign me up.
Go on YouTube and look up slashers, because the whole movie's in there like in 11 parts, and it's very much a spiritual child of The Running Man. You know what? I was just thinking as you were talking, Kevin, I'm like, can we possibly blame Rob Zombie's 31 on The Purge? I'd like to blame it. Because there's a similar, kind of halfway twist, if you will.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't feel like Rob Zombie was probably influenced by The Purge, though. But I do think that Rob Zombie's 31 probably got a green light on funding because of it. Wait, or did he even get funding? That was crowdfunded, wasn't it?
That is something I do not know.
I think it was crowdfunded. There was a lot of hype for the Rob Zombie fanatics on that movie. So I think he crowdfunded that movie. So I don't know. So I guess forget what I just said then, because that would make sense.
I'm going to go publicly here and just say I just had a great idea for a podcast that we won't get to until next year, since we just fleshed everything out. But great horror movies where the opening scene's the best part of the movie, because 31 falls in that category a million times over.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen the opening to 31, but it's Richard Brake giving this great monologue, and he looks awesome. He delivers it as only Richard Brake can, and it really, really, really is great. And you can stop the movie after that scene, quite frankly.
That'd be an interesting one. We'll have to remember.
I like the chainsaw clowns, but yeah, it's okay.
Isn't one it's like the big one and the short one, right?
Yeah. So one of the dudes was on The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
He's one of the guys in the prison. But yeah, it was.
I don't know. Lou Temple.
Yes.
Psycho Head.
Yeah.
And he's fun. I really do enjoy him, but it's a movie that has a good cast, but at this point, I'm sorry. Now we're way the fuck away from Purge. I apologize, but I don't know, I'm just thinking of things.
All right, so after The Purge, to kind of trigger it back into that, based off what we were just talking about, I have a Rob Zombie movie from, was it 99? 2003. Sorry, I don't know where fucking 1999 came from. And House of a Thousand Corpses. This is a interesting one in regards to the fact that it was successful on its box office return, but not enough to potentially have greenlit two sequels, in that it made $17 million off a budget of $7 million. It's got a 65% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.0 on IMDb. I don't. This is a case, I guess, similar to The Purge, where I think. Oh, I know Kent might argue this, but I think this is probably the weakest one in the series for me. And I never would have expected going from House of a Thousand Corpses, which it had some interesting scenes. I really like what they did with the death of the deputies and the sheriff. But it also had a lot of shit that didn't make sense. It was like flash cuts that you would see in like a Rob Zombie music video. The whole Dr. Satan thing I know I brought up last time, and again, that just feels like it gets brought up at the beginning, ignored for a good portion of the movie, and then comes out of fucking nowhere at the end and just goes like balls out crazy. I don't know if I necessarily think that Sherry Moon Zombie is a good enough actress to really maintain like the place that she has in most of his films. One of the things I don't think I brought up enough though is like the rest of the cast was fucking really good though. Not necessarily the victims, but you know, like Bill Moseley, Sid Haig. I forgot to say anything about Karen Black. You know, just really good performances of what they're doing, but it's more like they were trying to overcome Rob Zombie's deficiencies as a director and writer. And I will say this, like, I actually really fucking love The Devil's Rejects, so I never would have expected that if House of a Thousand Corpses, was what I had to base, all of my opinions on before going into that movie. So, there you have it.
Well, I like The Devil's Rejects more than House of a Thousand Corpses, but I do like House of a Thousand Corpses more than I like uh, the Three from Hell. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
And that's the only one that I've seen once of those movies, and or maybe any of his movies. Actually, I think that's the only one I've seen once. And the Monsters, but yeah. I do like House of a Thousand Corpses. It was intense when it came out, and I actually found it kind of impressive. But the second time you watch it, you kind of see and I've seen it probably like 6 or 7 times now, maybe 10 times, I don't know. But the first part doesn't kind of work with the second part, like the Dr. Satan thing. I don't know. It was always kind of cheesy to me. I really didn't care for it. But I do like the scene where he's like, you're looking for Dr. Satan and you found him and he's real, like, and then they're like dressed up like bunnies. I don't know. It was kind of wild. I was never really a big Rob Zombie fan. I mean, I liked maybe the More Human Than Human White Zombie song, but I was never really a big Rob Zombie music fan. And so I went in with like a really, really low bar. And I was impressed with it, but I do get it, because there is a lot of like Rob Zombie can do no wrong, and I think maybe it has the same effect like the Terrifier movies is. The people are so pumped about it, and it's just this like
fans are fanatics.
Yeah, and there's just like such a concentration of it between this small group that it seems bigger than it really is if you're, in tune with the energy of like, horror. So yeah, I get it. I understand what you're saying, but I do like it better than Three from Hell. But Devil's Rejects is so good. So good. And I'm glad they totally abandoned all of the Dr. Satan stuff, and it really had very little to do with the first movie pretty much 10 minutes after it starts.
I really feel like House of a Thousand Corpses, a lot of the problems is just that it's got so much baggage in like the homages it tries to evoke, like Texas Chainsaw, Hills Have Eyes, that kind of stuff. I mean, and when it comes down to it, would I rather watch Texas Chainsaw or House of a Thousand Corpses? I mean, I think that's an easy fucking choice right there.
Yeah.
Both versions of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, for that matter, because the reboot was really good, too.
All right. You got anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say this. And I don't think I'm wrong in saying this. The first half to the first, I don't know, like it's an hour and 29. You could even say like the first hour of the movie is actually really good. Now imagine you cut out that whole Dr. Satan shit and just give us more Otis, Spaulding, and Baby, and Mama Firefly, and definitely a lot more of Tiny. All right, you get rid of all the fucking Dr. Satan stuff, and you give us a completely different last half hour. I think that movie becomes a fucking masterpiece, quite frankly, because there was a lot of fun things. The first half hour itself's really, really good. It kind of, I don't know, I find it very enticing, and then you kind of are like, all right, we're gonna hit that middle part where, it could make or break the movie, and yeah, you're sitting there like, okay, Dr. Satan needs to pay off, and it does not pay off at all. Falls flat on its face. I don't know. There was a lot of good stuff there, and I'm cool with the homages. Like, it's just, it's a movie it's a horror movie. It's a fucking Stephen King movie. Let's let's be honest. All Stephen King movies start really strong and end up falling flat towards the end. I say every, but the vast majority of them fall flat in the second and third act. Okay, so I'm just going to call this a Stephen King movie. Quite frankly, a very, very violent Stephen King movie.
I mean, I would agree for a good portion of that, but I think the pacing is a little bit off too in regards to saying the beginning is a masterpiece because, even with the doctor saying, I feel like they needed to have one or two more victims in the group of victims. Because it feels like you go from 0 to half of them are dead within a relatively short period of time. The only other movie that I felt really had that big of pacing problems that I can remember off the top of my head is Prometheus, where you go from we're landing on this planet and we have some problems to half of the crew is dead within a 15-minute span of the movie.
Yeah. I think last time we also gave props to Dennis Fimple as Grandpa Hugo because his comedy was beyond on point. One thing, I don't know if we discussed it last time. Did we discuss whether you guys were pro or con on the really, really long Walton Goggins kill?
Pro, for sure.
Pro. That was. It is one of the highlights of the movie. And it takes a really...
I feel like some people don't.
It's got a sinking feeling in your stomach when that happens because it feels like the whole movie's coming together. The cops are in, the girl's dad is there, and then it's just... And it kind of actually feels like that scene belongs more in The Devil's Rejects than the rest of the movie, Yeah,
I mean, that's the problem. You got stuff like that shows flashes of greatness, and then you have, the jarring fucking MTV cutscenes, mixed in there. And I'm like, what the fuck is this shit?
Those cuts should have never made it. Those little snippets that you're referring to just never... It's shit like that gives the movie a far worse reputation, and, I mean, can't take it back at this point, but... I don't think Rob had enough people reining him in. Seems like a common thread in Chris.
Well, I think they made him cut a bunch of it.
Enough people
they made him cut a bunch of it though. So
yeah, I know, and yet they still kept some of this stuff in, which is just I don't know. I mean, maybe he was insistent upon it.
Maybe they thought it worked because Seven kind of had that kind of quick cutting stuff.
Yeah,
just that
at least
MTV
Rob
vibe.
Gave Chris Hardwick a job.
Yeah.
Fat Chris Hardwick, we all remember him from MTV Singled Out with Jenny McCarthy. Then we didn't hear from him for years. And then we saw he put on 50 pounds and was in a horror movie with Dwight from The Office. And those simple little things are delightful to think about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just want to say this from when the point where he's got the daughter, she's all tied up, and then he comes in with her dad's face on his. From there, after that movie, it all falls apart. But up to that point, I think it's really good. It kind of redeems itself, and it's totally sick and twisted. Where he tries to make out with her dad's face. On his, I don't even know how to describe it. Yeah, that's awesome. But then it falls apart because then the Dr. Satan shit's there. I don't know. I watch it once every 3 or 4 years. I own it. I love it. Rob Zombie's got a place in my heart, but yeah, it is not as great as the girl I worked with at the sex shop who was absolutely obsessed with Rob Zombie. It wasn't that good.
That whole sentence that you just uttered made a lot of sense to me.
And using that as a segue into my number 3. All right, so this one, hold on, 1 second. This was the 1999. This was the 1999, and I think actually my next 2 movies, my next 3 might all be from 1999. Was the remake of The Haunting with the all-star-studded cast with Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Owen Wilson, Lily Taylor, Bruce Dern, Virginia Madsen, and I don't think I can say anything good about this movie. I would much rather have gone to see House on Haunted Hill, which I saw afterwards, and I was like, wow, that was the better horror movie at the time with haunting, or haunt in the title. It made $181 million off a budget of $80 million. This is probably the one on the list that most reflects my own opinions, though, with only 28% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 5.0 on IMDb. It's just fucking boring. They blew their load on special effects, and even though I wouldn't say the original is a classic, the original is way better than this fucking remake was. This is, again, it was... I think this was about the time where, 3D effects were starting to, and CGI were starting to become, a little more affordable, so everybody was trying to do them, and this definitely feels like a movie where they blew their budget on the cast and on the special effects, and didn't bother looking for stuff like story, characters. It's a Jan de Bont horror movie, which should give you kind of an idea, because I think he's a decent director for action, but unless you're making something like Underworld or, I don't know, maybe some of the Resident Evil, mixing action in your horror is kind of antithetical to the whole purpose of the genre. I mean, I guess my biggest thing is it's fucking boring. It's not scary, and who wants to be bored watching a horror movie?
Nobody.
That's my thoughts.
Well, I'll go really quickly. I haven't seen this. But that cast sounds so good, and I like John de Bont, but I really only like Speed and Twister of the 5 movies he made. Speed 2 and Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, The Cradle of Life being the other 2 besides The Haunting. Yeah, so I wish I did check this out. 17% on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think it could be overrated though. But you said there was a lot of hype to it when it came out in the theater.
Oh yeah. It was.
There was. Yeah.
Not only that, but even though I don't think it showed up on a ton of lists, it still shows up. I'll be going. Because I can't tell you how many lists I've looked at over the last 3 or 4 years that we've been doing this kind. So when you start seeing the same movies over and over and over again on, best ghost stories, best haunted house movies, and you see this one come up at all.
It's just lazy.
I'm sorry. I mean, I know people worked on this, but it's really underwhelming.
Yeah. It was hyped enough that it got me off my fat ass to go to the movie theater and regrettably sit through however long it was. And this was during the peak of Catherine Zeta-Jones. I don't really remember Liam Neeson a ton prior to this movie, but he was in movies I hadn't seen, to be fair. It wasn't like he didn't exist, I just didn't know him that well.
He did a lot of more, I want to say, dramas and period pieces, stuff like that, before, he really hit his stride with that, semi-realistic action. Once he did Taken, every movie he did after that was some variant of Taken.
Right, yeah. Who's the other one? Owen Wilson, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know if I knew who the fuck Owen Wilson was at the time. But with that being said, the trailers made this seem like it was going to be a phenomenal experience. It really got me pumped. So once I left there, I was not so pumped, and I as much as I love theater popcorn, I'm not happy if when I walk out of the theater, if the best most positive thing I can say was at least the popcorn was good. If that's my sentiment, the film has failed me. Big time. And that's how I felt. It's weird because you mentioned, like how, Chris, you mentioned how this movie and then yet, another movie in the same year that didn't get us enough praise. That really seems to be the general vibe of 1999. The wrong movies get all the hype, and the better movies just kind of fell by the wayside. I know you're going to talk about it more, but it really does seem like a recurring theme of that. Probably even that like small little few year gap. There was probably a lot of movies that got more hype while there was better similar alternatives, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, just looking at Owen Wilson's filmography from 1999, you had The Haunting, Breakfast of Champions, and The Minus Man, and The Haunting is easily the worst one of those three movies. Yeah, and Kent, you hit it on the fucking head. They did a superb job with the marketing for this movie. It looked like it was going to be fucking amazing, and then it wasn't.
Sad but true.
All right, my next one on my list is another 1999 movie, The Sixth Sense. It had a box office take-in of $672.8 million off a budget of $40 million. It's got a rating of 90% on Rotten Tomatoes and an 8.2 on IMDb. I know we've probably argued over whether or not it's actually a horror movie, but they definitely marketed it as a horror movie when it first came out. I remember them really playing up the ghosts angle, making it seem like Haley Joel Osment was going to be in danger a lot from the ghosts. It's not a bad movie to watch once, but once you get the twist, especially if it's like, do you think a person could even watch it now and not know what the twist is? I mean, it's...
If you were like 10 or younger, maybe you wouldn't know, but there comes an age... There is a generation now that may have even heard of I See Dead People and have no idea where the fuck it's from. Maybe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wonder about the stuff like that where, I mean, something that's so prevalent, like May the Force Be With You or shit like that, is even possible, especially like you said. I guess if you're young enough, I could see somebody like not knowing who Kaiser Sose was or what the twist is for this movie. But I mean, other than that, you watch it once and it's good. I watched it twice, I think, and I've never had the desire to ever watch it again. I mean, this is one that I think I could say is probably a good movie, but like if you just look at the ratings, 90% and 8.2, that's fucking pretty high for both Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb, and I don't agree with it. I will bring up, I'm really glad we got Donnie Wahlberg, like a comeback in that. And there was a while where I think Haley Joel Osment was a really good gifted child actor, and he's done some decent stuff as an adult, although he doesn't look anything like he used to. And probably the best thing to come out of this was Toni Collette, because she's really taken off, and I fucking really enjoyed Hereditary, so...
Yeah, Toni Collette is definitely the star of this film. Yeah, I think it's you watch it twice. I do believe that the film easily could be rediscovered by 10, 15-year-old kids. But also I would have no idea because the way that they absorb entertainment is so different than the way we did, I guess, because it was so limited to what the news would talk about or what Entertainment Weekly or Entertainment Tonight or these were the things that you could you can just go on the internet and look up movie reviews or, stuff like that. It was, and even at that time, 1999, I guess we did have the Movieplex then, but before then we only had the theater that had two
The Holiday Inn.
Yeah,
screens,
Holiday Twin.
so yeah. Yeah, so that you'd get like 3 movies a day. They'd play like the kids' movies during the day, and then they'd play like a movie at night, and along with
Like
one movie,
Sleepwalkers.
like the blockbuster. That would be Sleepwalkers was the midnight, the 7 o'clock showing. They just show it the one.
Oddly
the one
enough,
time.
that made it to like the Sunday matinee, and I don't know how, but yeah.
Well, that movie probably was made to like come out in like the weird, I don't know. Was it like a summer
It
release?
was
I don't really
released
know, but-
right. I saw it on Easter with my mom. So
Oh, Easter, yeah. So that's like where
dump
they
some
like
stuff.
dump movies, Yeah, they dump movies. There's nothing really coming out, so they put that out there, and so it'll make its like box office. They make it for cheap, and then it plays for 5-6 weeks, and they make their money, or they try to, and then off to video rental. And that was another thing too, is like movies that I didn't really even hear. I worked at a video store, and I didn't really hear about Pearl Harbor until it was released in 2000 or whatever, and then it was like made to be like it was going to be the next Titanic, and it was going to be like this really big deal, and we all were like required to watch it. So I don't really think that there's too many movies like that anymore, but The Sixth Sense was definitely like a movie that once it came out on VHS or to rent, everyone was talking about it, and they wanted everyone to know what the twist was, so you kind of would, or they would either just ruin it for you, or because it was just, I don't know, something I think at the time that no one was really watching older kind of movies, because it really wasn't as mind-blowing. I think you think of it now as it felt then, that twist. So, Haley Joel Osment seeing dead people. So, all right, well, yeah. But it's all right. But yeah, it's totally overrated.
To go along with a couple things Kevin said, bringing up Pearl Harbor, I just want to say the best thing that came from that movie is the song about that movie that was in Team America World Police. The song was better than the whole damn movie. The other thing you were talking about was like media consumption, especially among like, the younger generation. And just yesterday, this is a tangent, I'll keep it quick, but I'm watching this video on like top 10 hardest bosses in a video game, and like the oldest video game used and referenced was Dark Souls. I was like, holy fuck, man, like, and he was being serious. I mean, he was just, I don't know, probably like a teenager, or maybe at best like early 20s. I was like, yeah, that made me feel really old, because I mean, Dark Souls is probably like a, I don't know, 10 years old. Is some, I don't know, could be a little bit older, but
I think 2011 maybe.
Yeah, so it's times like that where I'm just like, this is why I can't ever do like YouTube videos, because I have no idea how to connect with that audience anymore. It's baffling to me. But yeah, fuck The Sixth Sense. I've seen it twice. Toni Collette's the best thing that came out of it. I really don't think there's any argument to be made that anybody else outshined her. It opened up the door for Haley Joel, but I mean, I don't blame him. He took as much advantage of the opportunities he was given, but it's not like he went out and killed it afterward. And Bruce Willis always was just going to be Bruce Willis, so he could fall back on his name value that he'd built up over the years. But Toni Collette really was the real... Well, no, I would say M. Night Shyamalan was the real winner, quite frankly, because we still are watching his damn movies. And he's actually improved over the past 5 years or so. Like, he hit a rut, and now he's getting his groove back, so to speak. So, it's a shame.
I don't think The Sixth Sense would be on my top 5 Shyamalan movies.
Hell no.
And I'm not like the biggest fan of him, you know?
No.
It'd be number 6.
It'd probably be 6.
Wait.
Dude, so stupid.
Wait, where are you guys placing The Happening? Because if it's not number 1, then you guys aren't.
Happening is like second from the bottom. Only one worse than that is...
Happening is probably number 7.
Yeah.
Oh.
Sorry, Will Smith. Don't smack me.
Ooh.
Yeah. I saw After Earth recently. I tried to make it through so many times. I watched it. It was on Netflix. It's okay, but for a Shyamalan movie, it's probably 8 or 9. The Lady in the Water is definitely better.
Yeah, I actually really like The Lady in the Water, and I know a lot of people shit all over it. So.
Me too. I don't think it's on my top 5 though, so I would have to rework that out. But
am I the only one that's surprised now? Like I'm looking through the notes of this podcast and episode 43's podcast, and like we never included Stir of Echoes on Underrated, and I don't want to say like it's a missed opportunity, but really. One of us could have easily made the argument that the Stir of Echoes was criminally underrated for at least the first year or two from its release because nobody really saw it.
I mean, I would say that it's underrated in that like its box office wasn't anywhere near where The Sixth Sense was, but I don't know a single person I've ever met who saw that movie and was like, "This is not a good fucking movie."
Right. You can use box office as the argument.
And the video store element too, because it definitely was like a bit. My dad loved the Stir of Echoes we're talking about, Kevin Bacon.
Yes.
Right? Yes. Yeah, and that was a lot better than The Sixth Sense. And like rewatching those movies now, and Stir of Echoes still holds up for me. Even like, but the thing about Stir of Echoes is the first time I watched it and the second time I watched it, I couldn't remember what happened. Like, and as I'd rewatch it, I would be like, I'd kind of remember, but I didn't remember like the full twist. So I don't know if that does mean anything, but that made watching it again even better because I didn't remember it, and also it didn't have the hype at all that The Sixth Sense had. But Sixth Sense was it nominated for Best Picture?
I think it was.
I'm pretty sure it was. I can tell you in a second. I'm just waiting for the internet to load. It was nominated for 6 Oscars. That much we know. It was nominated for Best Picture. So, I mean, Haley Joel Osment got nominated for Best Actor in Supporting Role for that movie. I mean, what the fuck are we doing here, Academy Awards? What the fuck?
Well, he sold it. He did sell it, and it was pretty creepy. The end scene, I guess, that where at the little girl's funeral. It was pretty creepy, but it wasn't really scary horror. And that was I guess I did feel that was like a little bit disappointing explanation, but still an effective scene.
Let me offer you this, Kevin. Michael Clark Duncan in The Green Mile was also in Best Actor in a Supporting Role, and he didn't even win it that year.
Well, yeah.
That's
weird,
because
right? Because the Academy was still racist at that point.
Agreed. Michael Clark Duncan. I just actually, in Farming Simulator 2000 something, whatever, I modeled my character after Michael Clark Duncan. I was very proud of myself.
Oh, he's so good. Actually, I just saw The Island. Have you seen that with him? The Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson movie. He's pretty great in that movie. He's a small part, but
he did not necessarily have a lot of good choices about things that he made, though, because watching The Scorpion King with him in it again, you would be forgiven to even think that this guy knew how to act.
Facts.
Yeah, he's just given, the right. He's really good in The Green Mile. He's a lot of fun in Armageddon also.
Yeah, no, he
Uh,
he had some great performances, and then he had ones where you're like, whoa, that's like a fucking 1983 Arnold level of fucking acting quality.
yeah,
Agreed. Yeah.
work is work. I've had some pretty bad jobs myself.
All right, so to bring us on from the Sixth Sense, then I want to go into my number one most hated, overrated movie. uh, this one was not a box office success, but it's decently rated, and I see it on a ton of top lists all the time. And it's Event Horizon. It made 26.6 million off a budget of 60 million. It's got a rating of 61% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 6.6 on IMDb. I, I now that we're doing it again, I'm having trouble re-articulating like why I hated this movie so much. It's got a great cast in, Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, Joely Richardson, Jason Isaacs, Sean Pertwee. So a lot of like the British horror people who would continue to, well, I guess just British actors who would continue to come up because, Jason Isaacs has crossed over and do a lot of stuff, and so is Sean Pertwee. I know people go gaga and apeshit over like the 30-second scene we get of when the ship actually goes into hell. They compare it to Hellraiser, and I've heard people say it's the scariest fucking thing you can see on in a science fiction movie. I don't know.
Aren't there videos of people like slowing it down just so they can analyze every single detail of it?
Yes. And the one cool thing, I watched the director's cut last time, and they did, I want to say, add like maybe an extra minute worth of film of that being shown. There were some other cool things, like it had some good one-liners. Again, there was a scene where a couple people get blown through space without a spacesuit on, and like the effects and the repercussions of what actually would happen were pretty good. But again, this is another. It's a 1997. Watching it now, the special. Even just the 2 years between this and The Haunting, you can see like the great jumps that special effects took. It's one of those ones where a lot of the special effects look super fucking dated because it's got like that hyper real quality to it compared to what's being actually put on film at the same time. So that's one thing I'll give to them that I didn't say the last time, is that the scenes that they shot on video for them to see what was actually happening in the original ship were mostly practical, and they actually looked really good. But overall, I fucking hate this movie. It was disappointing then, it's still disappointing to me now. It's got some great performances, but outside of that, it's a Paul W.S. Anderson movie, and he is good when he sticks to shit like Resident Evil, action, almost horror with his, now ex-wife Mila Jovovich, versus, something that this could have been a great movie directed by like Guillermo del Toro. I think there's a perfect version of this out there with him behind it, or someone in that vein who can interject a little bit of, like, I can see Mike Flanagan doing something really good with this too, interjecting creepiness and intellect into the movie, where this just didn't have it. So there you go. That's my number one.
So, what I think about Event Horizon is I think it's kind of, well, I was surprised that it was on your list because it was a movie that was not thought of well when it came out. And I've, my dad liked it, and I think I had like one friend that was like really pumped on it when it came out. And I guess I didn't really care for it. then, but like, I don't know, you skip to like 10 years later, I went back and watched it and remember people like it not being very good. And, it kind of surprised me of how good it was with the practical effects, how well like the sets were, the special effects makeup. And then I watched it this past week, and I still think all of that is pretty solid. And Kathleen Quinlan, who I like, she was in some or in some Oliver Stone movies. I think she was in JFK, but she was in The Doors. And I remember her from the 90s, and she's like the main girl in this movie, leading actress. Yeah, I I get why people got like excited about it, but I didn't realize to the point that they were like overanalyzing 30 seconds of it. That is, I feel like it's somewhere in the middle. It's not like as bad as people thought it was when it came out. It was cool to see Sam Neill go batshit because I just kind of know him. You know, I didn't see Possession at the time, so that's the only other reference to Sam Neill going batshit. You know, like, and I did find that interesting, and the eyes hollowed up, but the CGI where they're on the wall, it's so bad. It's so bad. It's weird. Of like, there's things that are so bad in this movie, and then things that are, I think, you know, like the sets and stuff. It doesn't really look cheesy at all. The practical effects stuff look good, and even some of the stuff with like the cube thing or whatever it is. Maybe it's not like a cube, but the like circle thing that's like getting rotated. Yeah,
Yeah.
that looked good. I thought
The actual
that looked good.
Yeah, it's a real interesting dichotomy because like I said, the practical looks really good, and the CGI looks fucking horrible.
Yeah, so
not quite as bad as The Rock in, you know, The Mummy Returns.
Oh,
but,
that's,
you know, pretty fucking bad, so.
That's kind of hard to watch, but fun at the same time. How bad special effects were, but I find that stuff kind of interesting now to like go back and watch it. I think we talked, or we do talk later on about Dreamcatcher, where it kind of has some similar like good effects meets bad effects in the dated effects. But yeah. So I guess with the horror nuts that like think Event Horizon is like so good, but I feel like it's just from that like opposite effect of people not really respecting it at all when it came out, except for, you know, some people who like some of the darker sci-fi kind of stuff. But yeah, all right. What about you, Kent?
I feel like at this point, Chris and I have kind of gone on this Event Horizon thing so many times that I don't have anything new to offer other than to say that, you know, if we're being real here, Jason X is the definitive space horror movie after Alien. So that's really what I want to offer. Quite frankly, I think I'm going to force myself to watch Event Horizon because all these times that Chris and I have talked about this, I'm basing my memories off of seeing this like 15 years ago. So, which is pretty much worthless. So I think I'm going to watch it. And by the time we do the next podcast, I'm going to randomly intervene for about 45 seconds and be like, Chris is wrong or Chris is right, and move on. Because, I don't know, there's just not a whole lot more to... I mean, I don't know how many times we've talked about this particular film on this podcast. It gets brought up a lot because Chris has a little bit of disdain for the movie. I'll add this. I've been holding off on buying the Resident Evil, the final chapter. And eventually, I finally pulled the trigger. It was on sale for $8, and like 2 weeks later, it dropped down to $5. I've never been so dismayed by a movie dropping in price so quickly in my life after waiting however many years. That's what I have to say about Event Horizon.
I think part of the reason it probably hit like cult status after its release is because of how few really decent attempts we get at making sci-fi horror. And with that, I will stop talking about it and lead on into Kent's.
Okay, so as has been mentioned, I have a lot of movies. So what I won't be talking about is I won't be talking about Jaws or Silence of the Lambs or The Sixth Sense or Misery or Aliens. They're all very highly rated, and none of them are horror movies to me. So they are getting the cut. Now, when we previously did this, I had this great list, and I was like, by the time we get to me, we're going to be kind of bored as hell having to go through the same damn thing. So I already know I'm going to do a blog about it. So in the blog, I'm going to go over my 5 real picks of the overrated movies, which include The Descent, It Follows, Get Out, Dawn of the Dead, and Evil Dead 2. What I've decided to do, though, is I'm just going to throw out 5 other movies and get some outrage, I guess, going. I just want to especially shout out to Tusk. Although it's not on my list and it's not that highly regarded, that's one of those movies where we talked about Rob Zombie and his fanatics. Kevin Smith has the same damn thing, and they hyped up Tusk. Like, Kevin Smith fans hyped up Tusk quite a bit to me, and that movie fucking sucks. So I just want to throw that out there as an honorary mention. The other honorary mention I want to just toss out there, just on a statistic basis of using all my 11 different top 100 lists, The Exorcist is widely regarded as like the best horror movie of all time, and I know in the next episode of the podcast we do talk about Exorcist 3, and I think there's a really good argument to be made. While they're both masterpieces, if you watch both of them right now and I say which one's scarier, I think more than half the people are going to say Exorcist 3 is scarier than Exorcist 1. That's my hottest take that I'm going to make on this particular podcast. With that being said, here are my newish top 5. Number 5. Let's go with Friday the 13th. It's not the most highly regarded movie, but it's the original of a slasher franchise. It has a 6.4 on IMDb. It has 63% on the Tomometer and 60% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And the thing is, yeah, it has Kevin Bacon. Whatever. That part's a little overrated because how many well-known celebrities got their start in a horror movie? A lot of them have. So whatever. It's a good movie. I really like Friday the 13th. But if you were to actually sit down and watch, say, the first 6 Friday the 13th movies, skipping part 5 because, it's part 5 and it sucks, I'm hard-pressed to say that Friday the 13th is all that much better than part 2, part 3, and part 6. And I will definitely argue that part 4 is a better movie than Friday the 13th part 1. It just is. It has fucking young Corey Feldman being awesome. It checks the boxes for all the slasher cliches that we all know and love if you're into that type of movie. Friday the 13th, the original, gets by because it's the first one. Even though The Burning happened, and people seem to forget that fucking movie happened, even though it has Jason Alexander in it, it's pretty damn good. Friday the 13th, I'm throwing that surprisingly on my overrated list only because it has some sequels that are marginally better, but if you look at like these lists that like I have, Friday the 13th is like the only one that's ever really discussed on any of these lists, and I feel like you're legitimately splitting hairs between this and some of the other ones. The only sequel that got a single vote was Friday the 13th Part 6 got a number 94 ranking. So, I don't know. I don't think either of you guys really are like in love with Friday the 13th. I'm not sure if you guys even would know the difference between, say, Part 2, 3, and 4. I don't know. But, like, I don't know. Do you guys agree that Part 1 might be a little bit more overrated than it deserves?
I would agree with you. I'm really surprised that those words came out of your mouth, though, Kent. Like, that's the biggest shocking thing I've heard in probably the last 3 years of podcasts.
I'm making content here, Chris.
I mean, I just look at, like, the picture on your Facebook and, you know, like, the stuff on your website. You know, I don't know where this is coming from. What happened to Kent?
Listen, I have the hockey mask, I have the machete. Neither one appeared in the original Friday the 13th. That's what I got to say about that.
Or the second one, too, right?
Yeah, the second one has the burlap sack.
The burlap sack, and the third one is the 3D one, which is probably my favorite as a kid. I watched
it's really
quite
good.
a lot. Yeah, because it just like emphasizes the 3D gags with the eyeballs popping out where he just like crushes the head. Number 4 is really good. Yes, with Crispin Glover's epic dance sequence where he's just like having a seizure standing up, and yeah, Corey Feldman, and then 5 is like the worst movie I've ever seen in my life. It is awful. And I kind of think that Friday the 13th in general is overrated, and like in the same way that Nightmare on Elm Street is overrated, which I have a love for, and I have a love for Friday the 13th. Even the reboot I thought was well done. It was fun, but yeah, I'm actually really surprised you mentioned it also. And I just, but also I feel like it's kind of like an easy target. I think I think Scream, when, it was like the question in the beginning with Drew Barrymore and they mentioned the twist, and it was, I don't think that I really knew at that time that it was the mother, as the killer. If you haven't seen Friday the 13th or Scream, I can't help you. So,
you just ruined it for so few people.
so few people.
Well, if somebody survives later on down the road because somebody redoes the original Ghostface's questions on the phone, Kevin just saved their life.
Yeah, I did.
Kevin's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Good on you, man.
Yeah, but I can see that it's overrated. I think it is considered to some degree overrated, but that's because there's sequels and people like this one or that one. And, I remember Jason Goes to Hell was the one that came out when I was like 12 or 13, and it was corporate enough for my, for my dad to let me watch. I don't think there was like nudity or anything in Jason Goes to Hell.
In Jason Goes to Hell?
Yeah.
Three things of nudity.
Oh, wow. It's been a while.
Not that I was counting.
But, I haven't made it to it yet. I've been watching the movies, like, I'll watch one every Halloween. So in the last 5 years, I've made it to 5. So, I'm excited.
5 is just a demoralizing situation,
Yeah.
man. It is.
So I'm going to wait until October, and I'm going to check out number 6, and I'm excited for it. But, yeah. That's my 2 cents.
Six is like where you get like zombie Jason. He has the fucking spear, and it's the last time we get Tommy Jarvis, and Jarvis is great. I don't know. It's a lot of fun at the very least. It's either where you consider the franchise to have gone straight up silly, or it brought the franchise back for Part 6 and Part 7, because a lot of people like Part 7.
Is that Corey Feldman's character from the 4th one? Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And I think Tommy Jarvis is played by the guy that's in Return of the Living Dead. I think it's the same blonde-haired dude. I can't think of the character's name, but if anybody's familiar with that franchise, you know who I'm talking about. All right. With that being said, and I promise this is definitely not a trend whatsoever because I pre-planned all of this. My number 4, Nightmare on Elm Street. Kevin just brought it up. We talked about this a few months ago. But I'm sorry, why the fuck is Nightmare on Elm Street on so many lists? But Nightmare on Elm Street 3, lo and behold, it shows up on 2 lists, one at 98, one at 50. Meanwhile, the original Nightmare is on 10 of the 11 lists. 73, 20, 31, 72, 65, 10, 15, 14, 12, and 11. Those are some pretty lofty numbers, and I love the original. We all do. We talked about this ad nauseum at the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise podcast. With that being said, I still think we all walked away saying Part 3 was the better movie. So if that's the case, why the fuck is it not getting any respect compared to the original? And once again, it's just because there's origin bias in horror movies. And it's kind of frustrating, like, the more I delved into these lists, like, how little respect sequels got, which is going to go into, episode 44, I'm sure. We're diving into the terrible twos. But yeah, for horror franchises, which there's a plethora of them, like, it's almost always the original gets all the love. Even a movie as great as Exorcist Part 3, The Exorcist gets all the fucking love. Nightmare on Elm Street gets all the love, not Part 3. It's kind of frustrating if you're a fan that's actually watched the movies and you know that there's a definite difference in quality or entertainment value, whatever you want to call it. So, yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street, my number 4 overrated movie. Thoughts?
You're just going big for this list now, Kent.
Hey, I'm trying to create new content just so we're not bored.
No, I'd agree. I mean, for everything great about both of these last two, especially the creation of 2 of horror's biggest icons, there's a lot of, 80s isms and not necessarily good ones in both of the movies. Nightmare on Elm Street is a horror movie that's really tame, too, by today's standards. Like, you're looking at a handful of kills. Some of them very creative, some of them not so much. I mean, we get a lot of blood, but not a lot of actual gore. Especially with Johnny Depp's death.
That counts for 95% of the blood.
That counts for 95% of the blood in, like, the whole series. So yeah, no, I can't knock it because, like, I completely agree with you. The origin bias really does hit hard in both of those franchises.
I also, I'm just gonna agree. And the origin bias, yeah, it's a real thing. I think I kind of suffer from it also, or I'm guilty of it. Like, as an example, maybe this will be a segue into your third one, but Saw. I really liked the first Saw, but, like, if I was to rank them, I would feel like I'd have to put Saw 1 up higher than 6 or 7. And, I mean, I guess the first one's probably better than 7, but I think Saw 6 might be the best one of all of them. But even the second and third ones aren't as bad as I remembered after coming off the first one. I think the first one was just simple, and that was what was nice about it. But when you really get into, like, the giant franchise of it, there are things that are terrible about sequels, and then there's the cliches that people think, about sequels that make them worse, like the excess or the more kills or even like the formula that kind of Jamie Kennedy character in the Scream films kind of explains that they all kind of tie together with these rules. Yeah, sometimes going off the rails, like say Jason X, that one is just so good, so good. And I agree that it is better than Event Horizon to do a callback to that. But anyways, yeah. So yeah, I agree. I agree.
All right. Now, this next one actually was like the last movie I crossed off my list last time we did this. And actually, it's funny, Kevin, because Saw almost made it this time on this list, but it just missed the cut. Um, so I'm fully aware that most people are going to disagree with me on this one. Whatever. To complete the trilogy, Halloween. Not because of origin bias, because it's a really well-made movie, don't get me wrong. But Jamie Lee Curtis is overrated. More importantly, and this is where my biggest points of emphasis is going to be, and this is where I'm going to get detractors. Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween was a better story and better film than the original Halloween. And there's no shame in that, but people will not accept that truth. But they actually gave us a story behind Michael. That was kind of nice to know why, he was the way he was. I liked it. I liked having that little bit of a backstory. The acting overall was better in Rob Zombie's remake. I'm really trying not to take anything away from John Carpenter because I do think the man's a freaking genius. I think the original Halloween holds a special place in horror. I mean, it did so much good. But Rob Zombie's Halloween never gets even mentioned as like a good movie. Like, not even like to say that's better than the original. It just doesn't even get like mentioned as a good movie half the damn time. And I don't really get that. It seems like there's just so much pushback sometimes on Rob Zombie, which we talked about quite a bit earlier. I don't know. I'm going to say the original Halloween is overrated. I'll even say that the sequel to the original Halloween, because we got 4 fucking timelines or whatever. Halloween 2 was actually really, really good and may have actually been better than the original Halloween. And I don't even want to talk about the new trilogy because I just don't want to. But at least one of you guys got to disagree with me on this.
I'm just curious if your next 2 are going to be like Alien and The Exorcist, or maybe The Thing and I don't know.
No, you're not going. You wouldn't be able to guess the next 2. I don't think. I'm breaking the tradition here.
No, Kent, I fucking agree with you, man. Because I mean, it gave us an entire genre, but like I think the biggest problem with Halloween is that it was supposed to be a one and done, and then recontextualizing it into a series. You end up having a lot of issues trying to make it work. I mean, and they did, but, doing what Rob Zombie did with the remake, fixes a lot of that shit. And like you said, it gives a reason for what's going on in a backstory. Whether or not you needed it is probably going to be depending upon whether or not you prefer one or the other. I mean, I don't think Jamie Lee Curtis is overrated because I think she's been in let me put it like this. I think she's overrated in horror movies, but I think she's got fucking great comedic timing. I love some of the comedies she's done more than almost anything. Trading Places, Fish Called Wanda. But yeah, no, I would agree. She's overrated to be considered a scream queen. So no, I would say that your list is probably pretty fucking accurate rather than controversial so far.
Yeah, I agree with Halloween being overrated. I like Rob Zombie's Halloween, and when I said that, and I thought I wasn't excited about Rob Zombie doing Halloween because I really liked The Devil's Rejects a lot. So when I found out that he was going to do something unoriginal and like a remake, and that just sounded like poison, just get it away from me to begin with. Uh, what he did was he added all of the mythology that they added in, because it's Halloween 2 that we find out that Laurie and Michael are brother and sister, and I think and they obviously did do themselves a disservice by adding that in and then killing her off, and then uh, it I kind of feel like Halloween 2 is kind of overrated also. And I don't really know much about the other ones. I remember seeing Halloween 4 as a kid. I don't remember Halloween 3. I think I saw it, but it just never clicked in that it was a Halloween movie, because I don't know. I was probably like 10 years old or something from renting movies from Mr. Video. I remember the cases a lot. Uh, but yeah, I liked, and I remember seeing Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and I was really weirded out by it, and then like bringing uh uh Cherry Moon Zombie back as the mother, and she's like this apparition or something. I don't know. I didn't like it, but the more I thought about it, and then the next time I went and watched it, I kind of enjoyed it because it went a way different route than I think what the first one sort of set up, or even the way the second one. Yeah, no,
Dude, that movie gets better
yeah, me
on
too.
repeated viewings. Halloween 2, I hated
I was
the
really
first time,
disappointed
and
with
now
it. I
that's
think
like
because I was
I
so
kind of dig
like
it.
expecting the first one to not be as cool as it was, and it was like a great homage. I know that John Carpenter didn't like it, and because they kind of like exposed the mystery of, they did too much explaining of Michael Myers. Uh, then they don't even. He's just the shape. He does. Does he even have a name? Did they even call him Michael in the first one? I don't know. I'd have to. He's just the shape.
No, no, they
Yeah.
don't. He's
So,
just the shape, and I
um,
mean that's literally what he's listed as.
it's
Yeah.
weird because
Yeah.
by the time I saw those movies, that mythology was already out there. So I kind of already knew that the first time that I saw it. So it's just weird. So to how I went into it. So uh, but yeah, the first one is a classic. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's so iconic. I mean, how could it live up to it? Sort of like Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th. And if you weren't like raised at the time that we're all of the same age, like
Yeah.
growing up there, like even if we didn't watch those movies, we knew about them. So because they were like ingrained into pop culture.
Oh, it's so much of that. Think about how many other things like Simpsons and whatnot used the synthesizer beat. When they
Yeah,
wanted to try to fucking set
and
something up.
all the other areas of pop culture that referenced it
Yeah.
too. Yeah, so
I
yeah,
mean, the William Shatner.
and that was stuff that like came up.
That's
I don't know,
got its
in the
own lore.
'90s, right? That was
Even.
like the trivia behind it. Yeah, so it probably wasn't like
That was the first time I'd heard it.
getting pumped out
Yeah.
there when it was made, because I don't even think that Star Trek was really even big at the time until they made the first movie, which I think was, I don't know, was it like 1980, the first Star Trek movie? I don't, maybe 70. So that's kind of when it had its like,
Late
That.
I
'70s,
don't know,
maybe. Yeah.
when it started coming back around, and then people appreciate it, started to appreciate it to where it is today, where it's cemented in history with Star Wars and, now Marvel. So, yeah, but Yeah, I agree. I'm proud of you, Kat.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember when I was very young, when my parents got their first VCR, and my mom got super excited. She's like, "I'm gonna show you something special," like because she saw it in the theater, and I'm pretty certain this was like the first R-rated horror movie that she showed me. I don't even know, like I was like 4 or 5, and like she like made like this special treat, and I was so hooked. Like as a kid, like having never seen anything like it, dude, it was like mind blowing to see. Um, and the whole scene in the beginning, like Michael seeing his topless sister and all that stuff, like that stuff's still iconic. It's one of those things where you have the iconic the mask, you have the music, you have the iconic opening, you have Donald Pleasance, and all those things are great, but it's just not the full film that Rob Zombie presented to us, surprisingly. So, all right. My number 4, I don't think there's going to be much debate, only because I don't know if you guys have seen what I'm about to go with. But number 4, going with The Strangers, which I know you guys have seen. But have you guys ever seen Ills, better known as Them? It's a 2006 French
No,
film.
but I want to.
Got it? Okay, so The Strangers came out 2 years later, and we'll say borrowed heavily from Ills. Um, and I had heard about this movie, so I tried downloading it because I couldn't find it like any place to rent or buy at a reasonable price. And then I think it was like early on Netflix time frame when you were getting the DVDs in the mail. I eventually got it. Because the copy I downloaded just looked like shit. I mean, we all know what movies downloaded in like the mid 2000s just looked like shit. So, especially a darker movie. So finally to see it on DVD, I was like, "Oh, this is fantastic." And then I was sad because nobody I knew had seen it. So for probably like a year or two, it was like one of those movies that I actually tried showing as many people that would, humor me. Be like, if you like The Strangers, give this a shot. And I'm not saying that it's better or worse. I'm just saying it's never fucking talked about. It's like the movie doesn't exist. And I don't know why something like that happens. Because all too often, we usually cite, the foreign movie that came before the American remake, so to speak. That just didn't happen with Ills versus The Strangers. It just never fucking happened. And special shout out to how bad The Strangers 2, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but The Strangers 2, they're the first horror movie that finally took my idea of using Total Eclipse of the Heart in a horror movie, because that song's meant for a fucking horror movie, and it was fucking terrible what they did with it. So terrible. So, double slap on the wrist for The Strangers. Also, I don't think Liv Tyler is, I don't really like her that much as an actress. Like, she's perfectly average, and that's about it. Like, I don't hate her. I don't really get her hype, other than she's Steven Tyler's daughter. So, I don't know if you guys want to add anything, knowing that you haven't seen Ills, but like, did you guys like The Strangers? Like, do you like, I don't know, have you seen better home invasion movies? I guess is a better question, maybe.
Oh yeah,
Let it go.
I did like The Strangers. I haven't seen it in a while. I don't know about this movie. It sounds familiar. It's them. It's 2006, so it came out like just before The Strangers, right? That's what I'm looking at. Ills.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much the same gap as like Let the Right One In. I think there was a 2-year gap between.
So is it really based on that?
American.
Or is it just because it doesn't cite The Strangers as based on it, I don't think.
It's very much. I think if you watch Ills, the thing you'll walk away saying is,
"Oh, okay.
that's where The Strangers got it from." It's not as direct as other things that we've seen redone in the U.S., like Martyrs, for example. But without this movie, The Strangers just doesn't happen at all. The biggest difference is like The Strangers have like the bad guys are all adults, I'm pretty sure, versus in Ills, not to give too much away, but the antagonists are different, I'll say.
Yeah, but I did like The Strangers, and I think Liv Tyler is good in an ensemble, but I could see being the main character in a really small cast of characters. I could see that running kind of long, because that is basically what The Strangers is, right? There's 3 of them.
Yeah, she had a beefy role that, I mean, she did admirable, quite frankly, for the role in The Strangers. It's just, you're right, she's better in an ensemble. I think that's a fair way of saying it.
Yeah, I think probably the best thing I've seen with her in a small, like, main kind of role was probably Super. Yeah, she was okay in Lord of the Rings. I don't think she's a great actress, but I also don't think there's a lot of people trying to say that she's a great actress. You know what I mean? Yeah.
No, she had name value for a little bit because of Armageddon and her fucking animal crackers.
Yeah, movie made
she had name value.
But movie made a lot of fucking money.
I think that's kind of died off.
She was the main girl in it. That'll set you out for a while.
I mean,
yeah,
the Lord of the Rings too. I mean, she wasn't a major part of it, but probably one of the 2 largest.
Made a lot of
roles.
fucking money.
But I mean, she was fine in that. She wasn't, she didn't need to be great because it wasn't about her. I really like The Strangers too. I don't know if I would necessarily think it's overrated because I think it's really well done. But again, I haven't seen Ills to compare it to, so if that was the case, then yeah, it could potentially be another thing of the something just overshining something that should have been rated higher. So I don't know.
Realistically, my hope with this is that people who are listening will eventually go and try to find a copy of Ills and watch it and judge for themselves. That's my hope of actually putting that on here, because I could have gone quite a few other routes, but I really wanted to give some shine to Ills. So please, if you're listening, Tubi. Try to find it.
It's on a lot of the free ones, but Amazon Prime has it for free also. There you go. So there you go. Yeah, and it's an hour and 17 minutes long, so I mean, with commercials, It's going to be less than 2 hours. So I'll definitely check it out, and I need to check out The Strangers again. It's been, I think I watched it once, probably twice, and from 10 to 8 years ago.
They're remaking it.
I never saw the
sequels. Last I heard, they're already rebooting it. The Strangers.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to check it out. It was bad. Maybe for next month.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. My number one, I mean, I've already heard at least one of you praise this movie during this podcast, which brought me some inner joy. I love this movie, but I'm going to try to make the argument that I think it's overrated. That is Hereditary, which really pains me to say. But if I'm just going strictly by the numbers on where this was in like a lot of lists, it was as high as number 3, 10, 18, 21, 33, 25. Like, we're talking like upper echelon of all-time horror movies. And I can't help but feel there's just a smidgen of recency bias going on here. And to compare with it, because really a lot of shitty movies based on witches and stuff, but I'll toss out not only the film The Witch or the double V Witch, whatever. I'm also going to toss out Suspiria. To a different extent, but Suspiria reminds me a lot of Hereditary in themes and whatnot in some capacity. I'm just not sure that Hereditary does a whole lot. I mean, Toni Collette's acting probably puts it above the other two, but not so much to put it in like top 20 all-time horror discussion and leaving those other two out. I guess that is the crux of my argument. Is as great as it is, I feel like you can't sit there and put this on a pedestal and then just kind of be like, yeah, Suspiria kind of exists and The Witch exists, but Hereditary, it's the shining thing. I love Hereditary. I love the girl who played Charlie. I think everybody in it was great, including Anne O'Dowd, who I'm a huge fan of. The fucking husband, Gabriel Byrne, I think it was.
Dude, I remember when we were doing the podcast for that one, like the scene where he's just sitting down at the traffic light and fucking he breaks down and just starts fucking crying because his wife is fucking losing her mind.
Yeah. It's really, really well acted. It really is. The ending's okay, but I don't think I'd put it in my top 20 all-time horror movies. I don't. I sit here as a person that, I mean, the fact that Chris has mentioned that, we talked about in the podcast, we did the fucking blog about it. Like, I have talked a lot about Hereditary. I'm a huge fan of it. I just don't think it's as good, and I think a lot of it has to do with recency bias, and or like, just the younger generation not being necessarily exposed to some of the other stuff, so naturally it's going to be higher on a certain generation's list than maybe for a different generation. That's kind of where I'm at, and like I said, I love it. It's in my top 50. It's just not my top 10. I think that's a pretty big, there's a big line somewhere in between for me. And it's tough to say because I love the movie. I'm not knocking the movie. It's just, it is overrated, is where I'm at. Like, there's no way it's number 3 or number 10 all time. It just isn't. So.
It is weird that it's so high. The first time I saw Hereditary, I was totally blown away by the mid sequence, or like the first hour, and like the car sequence, we'll say, because I didn't see it coming and what the movie was leading to. I didn't really understand it. I didn't even get the witch stuff all the way. I just really wasn't into that stuff, but I liked what was going on in the movie, and it was kind of because I wasn't really tuned into all of the, like, I knew it was kind of happening, but I wasn't really like super tuned into the witch stuff. I wasn't really trying to get into it, just kind of like watching what the movie was going to offer. And I liked it, and the ending was okay. And then I watched it again for the second time a couple months ago, and I kind of got the ending, and I kind of get why people were so hyped about it. I think because once it kind of clicked that this woman, the mother, Toni Collette's mother, like ruined their lives because she was a witch, and then she kind of like estranges the family, and then through the death of her daughter and the death of her mother, it kind of like through their death brings them back together in this fucking strange way, and just how the end kind of clicked. I still wouldn't say I completely get it, so I feel like there's at least another good rewatch in it, knowing more than I did the second time, and obviously the second time I knew more than the first time, so.
Am I wrong in because I've watched it a few times and every time I'm left a little bit, but am I wrong in saying that basically Charlie was meant to be the leader but was in the wrong body, so basically Anne O'Dowd, being part of that group, had to get the brothers soul out of his body so Charlie could have the body and become the next leader. Is that kind of the idea?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I got, yeah. It's really tricky the first time.
Because
I didn't
if I remember correctly,
I was
Paimon
really
can
confused.
only take over a male body. So Charlie was supposed to be the next one, but because she was born a girl, they had to murder the whole family to get Peter's, fucking soul out of his body to fucking be able to be possessed by, Charlie and yeah. I mean, it's the reason it works is because it's well written, it's well acted, it's well directed. It's an allegory to, how much of it is actually horror, which again at the end of the movie, if you take everything at face value, we see is, actually horror versus how much of it is mental illness caused by, the fucking trauma that the family's going through. But yeah, no, I would agree with you, Kent. It's a good movie. It's a really good movie, but it's not
the third greatest horror film of all
maybe.
time. I could, it's not.
I don't know. I haven't ever really thought about making like a top 10 list, but I don't know if it would make my top 10 list. Probably top 10 most recent horror movies. Yeah. But
like from the 2000s on, it definitely makes that top 10.
Yeah.
I think
I
that's
might even go Midsummer over Hereditary.
What about? See, I feel this and Babadook are like sibling movies in some way. Like
I didn't see Babadook.
Oh my God, Kevin, that was a shot through the heart.
See, part of the reason that Babadook hit me so hard, Kent, was when I watched it. My son was about 6 months old, and I was watching my wife go through the whole lack of sleep experience with having a newborn. And I saw that, and I was like, oh my God, don't let Krista see this movie until Owen's older, because this is going to resonate with her so much right now.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a movie that hits people differently depending on life experiences, obviously. And I mean, I have no idea what you do and do not know about the movie, Kevin. So I'm not trying to hype it or anything. To me, it hits, even though like I'm not even a parent. It just hits in a different way. But I will tell you this ahead of time, Kevin. The kids go fucking drive you nuts the first half hour of the movie, but you just gotta let it go. That's the best I can tell you. Just gotta go with it.
Yeah, I've heard people mention that the movie is pretty annoying, or the children are. But it's on Shudder, it looks like, or AMC Plus somewhere. So I will. I'll definitely try to check that out soon.
Then when you watch that and you see, I don't know if you've ever seen Essie Davis and some other stuff. But then you'll understand like why Kent and I were so disappointed by that last episode of Cabinet of Curiosities.
So disappointed.
And it was Jennifer Kent directed it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh. And the dude played Rick Grimes. Andrew Lee.
Yeah, and between the director and the star of the Babadook being in like the most disappointing episode of Cabinet of Curiosities, it's just kind of like, what the fuck was the point of that shit?
And then that being the first episode I watched. Like, I guess in some ways maybe it was good, because everything after that seemed pretty damn good. But, I don't know. Actually, that would be a good... I'm already writing down ideas for next year's podcast, but best horror movies of since 2000, because I feel like we're in a really good golden age of like a lot of different ideas for horror. Like, I mean, the 80s was the decade of slashers, and 90s was ending out with that, but then introducing us with Scream, and they tried a couple of other things, but like 2000s have been really kind to us in horror, I think.
I think a good portion of that is because with so many indie successes, they've shown that you can make money off of horror without necessarily having to, blow 150, 200 million on it like you would with an action movie or a sci-fi movie or a superhero movie. So, yeah, we've had all sorts of stuff from, there was like a good ghost story portion, a demonic possession portion, found footage. It's been all sorts of over the place. Serial killers, I would say it's a resurgence. Even, like it's way more easy to find, I would say, foreign horror now than it used to be. I mean, think about like in 2006 when Ills came out. You wouldn't have even probably fucking have heard about it over here. Yeah.
No, absolutely not. I randomly came across on some list because, it was a point in my life where I was just trying to find like the scariest and or most effed up movies. So, I mean, that's how I came across, Salo and Antichrist and other movies. But yeah, I'm happy that I came across it. It's kind of like there's a movie called The Loved Ones that a lot of people don't know. It's an Australian movie, and it's really, really good. But the Australian movie that everybody knows is fucking Wolf Creek, which is okay, but a kind of cliche in some ways, too. But yeah, foreign horror is, I mean, we're not even touching the Asian horror, which has really been good, too. So.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
So, since this is going to be a wrap-up for this one, I know it's only been a couple weeks since we did the prior/sequel podcast. Did you guys check anything new out since the last time we talked?
I have.
I watched one thing, but I think I'm gonna save it for the next podcast and put it on my list.
Gotcha.
So, but yeah, go ahead, Kent. What have you seen?
Are you holding off? Are you holding off on Skinamarink?
I haven't watched it yet.
No, I did see Skinamarink though. Actually,
did you like it at least? Like, is it something that I'm halfway through it and I still have no interest? Does it get better?
I don't think so. I mean, it comes together but if you really don't like the first half of it, like, then I think it's gonna be tough because it is. I mean, I don't want to say anything about it, but so you create your own opinion of it. Maybe it does come together. I just like movies that really like push. I don't know. First of all, they make me feel like I can make a movie, because they're so like cheap, and I can't, but it makes me feel like I can, So I like, and I like the way that they use just lighting and the use of child actors with, and doing like a movie. Like, child actors are really tough to work with, and they found a way around it where they're just doing voiceovers and we don't really see the kids' faces, and the way they created this film for so little. And yeah, I like art films. I had the patience for it, so I did enjoy it. I did like it, but yeah, it's.
Let me ask you this: is the scares in atmosphere, or is the scares involved jump scares? Because I've heard it's just jump scares and a little bit of like, it's mostly atmosphere, and then you get a couple jump scares, and that's kind of how the movie has been summed up for me. And I'm all for atmosphere, but I don't, as we know, I'm good for one or two jump scares, and beyond that,
yeah, I don't think there's any jump scares into it. It's all very more like atmosphere and creepy, and it's okay. I mean, there's some stuff that goes on, but yeah, it doesn't really feel like, I don't know. It's just like creepy and atmospheric. But yeah, it's not like super scary. I feel like it's more trying for people. So yeah, you'll get there. It's okay overall, but yeah, I liked it, but I'm not crazy about it. It's not like, mind-blowing experimental filmmaking, but I do admire what they did with very little, and getting the exposure that they got for that kind of movie,
Right.
So less people are gonna like it than enjoy it. And then the people that enjoy it like make it like it's something greater than it is too. So it's kind of great to talk about on this podcast. They're just, I don't know, like against the grain people. Like when people say, "Oh, they didn't like that," they gotta like come up with excuses of why it's so great, and it's like you don't. You can just be like, "Oh, I liked it." You know, they kind of like drum up stuff to like computer critics.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to throw out what I have seen recently. I already discussed Waco. If you haven't seen it, it's on Showtime. I don't need to delve further into it. It was just a really well done miniseries. I recently saw Clue for the very first time, as strange as that is to say, and I had a great time with it. It's dated as hell, and I don't even know if some of the comedy may not hold up well in today's society, but it was funny. It was a funny movie, and I had a thoroughly an entertaining time. I think that was on Prime, but I also have it on Vudu, so either way, I had it. On Netflix, I saw a documentary called The Pez Outlaw, and that was a surprisingly fun little documentary. I would recommend. I think it was only like an hour and a half. It was kind of about this dude who would go over to Europe and get these rare or unique Pez dispensers that Pez USA was refusing to sell, so he created this whole like market, and then he became the Pez Outlaw. It's a simple idea, but it's fun. I'm trying to kind of funnel this stuff. I saw Air on Amazon. It's about Nike and the Air Jordan sneakers. Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, Jason Bateman, a very overweight Jay Moore, which I didn't know he put on so much weight, but he's also banging the owner of the Los Angeles Lakers, Jeannie Buss, so good on him. Overall, good movie. I really enjoyed it. The best actor in it was the detective from M. Night's movie Devil. I don't have anything up to tell you his name, but really, he was a really great performer in that particular film. I would recommend it if the idea of finding out the origin of Michael Jordan's sneakers sounds remote.
You know what's funny?
And
is that the detective from Devil, who is in Error, is also the lead in that Boogeyman, which is getting pretty decent reviews out right now.
Chris Messina is his name,
yep.
Right? Yeah. So I don't know. I'm all in on him as a performer now. He played David Falk, which is Michael Jordan's agent, the player agent, and he just goes off on like swearing tirades. He's just really like that outlandishly funny type of guy in a movie like that. So it has a lot of good music if you like, 80s music. It is what it is. It knows how to pop the audience that's trying to watch it. I recently rewatched Ready or Not, which is a really underrated, relatively recent movie, because it's horror, but it's also got a lot of comedy elements to it. And I don't want to say it fell through the cracks, but quite frankly, nobody ever talks about the damn movie. So to me, that's fallen through the cracks. And I don't know. I think it deserves a little bit more love. So I'm giving the movie a little bit more love. I saw Shivers by David Cronenberg. If you know David Cronenberg, it's about a sex-crazed parasite that goes person to person kind of thing in an apartment building. There you go. It's a great little Cronenberg's 1970s era. I think it was late 70s. But with all that out of the way, there's two movies in particular I did want to talk about with you guys, because I'm guessing I know Kevin's seen at least one of them. Either of you see Violent Nights with David Harbour?
Yeah, that's
it's
on my
so
list to
good.
watch this week, actually.
Okay. Dude, you know how much I love Home Alone. You're gonna like it. You're just gonna like it. And there's a character called Krampus in the movie, and it's played by Brendan Fletcher, who was in Freddy vs. Jason. He was the best friend of the guy. They were in the insane asylum together. So, yeah, there's my little horror tie-in, and it was just a lot of fun. It's a fun movie. I think you'll really like it, and I won't give anything more away. And the last thing on my list was Pearl, which finally made it to Showtime. I think it was Showtime, not Paramount Plus, whatever it was. I got to see it. I read that some people are saying in some ways it reminds them of like the female version of the film The Joker with Joaquin. And as I'm watching it, I was like, that's not a bad analogy. Like, it's not as good as The Joker. Her performance isn't as good as Joaquin's, but Joaquin's is like an all-time performance, and this is still very, very, very good. Like, it's a great performance. Mia Goth is just killing it as of late. I think Pearl may have been the better movie between Pearl and X, but I think X was still a more fun movie. And Kevin, you've seen Pearl. One thing I noticed, is it just me, or did they make the inside of the home look a little bit like the home in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the red wallpaper?
It's been a while. It's been a few years since I've seen Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so I don't know if I remember. But yeah, that makes sense. They had a lot of homage to lots of different movies in that. I would say Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Wizard of Oz. And
yeah, really two very different movies.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, they're both.
I agree pretty much with everything you're saying. It is not as good as Joker, but her performance was like really, really good in Pearl. Up till like almost halfway of the movie, I'm like, yeah, she's way better in Infinity Pool, but even Infinity Pool, halfway through the movie, you don't get how great her performance is until you make it to that, the late second act, middle of the third act,
Right. She's officially made me a fan, so now I'm going to go back and watch she was in the remake of Suspiria, she was in A Cure for Wellness, and Marrowbone, and I have all three of those. So I'm going to go back now because I'm officially on a Mia Goth kick, and she has the it factor. She has to be this decade's girl of horror.
Nice.
As far as I'm concerned. I don't think there's anybody else that's touching it.
I mean, we're only 3 years in, so I mean, that's...
You heard it here, Mia Goth.
Yep, I'm proclaiming it right now. Because it is. I mean, as long as she kills it in Maxine, that's 3 movies in that trilogy plus Infinity Pool. I don't know. That'd be four really good performances. I don't know who else is going to come up with 4 great performances in horror. Usually, females don't stick in horror.
In 2 years, too.
Too awful much. Like, there's a few...
in 2 years, too. It's like a very short period of time for 4.
What was that?
Yeah. 3 in 2 years, two of the X, Pearl, and Infinity Pool, That's crazy. Sorry, Kent. I'm with you.
No, I'm really, really kind of, I don't know, she's got my undivided attention moving forward. So I'm really excited to see Maxine and whatever else, is on her, to-do list for movies. So that's what I've admittedly watched a bunch of shit since the last podcast. So I still haven't seen the Japanese version of Cube, which is on Screenbox. But I'm going to. Chris?
The only... shit, what did I watched? Yeah. Pretty much far away from a horror kick lately. I went to the movies with my wife and we saw Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which I really liked. Actually had me tear up like 6 or 7 times during the movie, but I am a sap, so there is that. We just watched Shazam 2, Fury of the Gods, which is on HBO, and she liked it, but I wasn't very impressed by it. I did get a chance to finish Season 2 of Channel Zero, though, which we had talked about a little bit the last podcast we did.
Did you like it better than the first season?
Yeah, I didn't dislike Season 1, but I think Season 2 had a much clearer vision. Even if it changed how I thought it was going to go by about like the second or third episode.
Yeah. By I think the third episode, all of a sudden, like everything that I was coming to expect of where it was going to go, nah, it didn't.
But it definitely, I think, it hit the mark for atmosphere. I think it was probably one of the creepiest like House is Alive stories I've seen put on film, and John Carroll Lynch fucking killed it. But he's really good at a lot of stuff I've seen him. Like he killed the scenes he was in, which weren't many of them, in Zodiac too. Like I don't remember all of the movie, but I remember each scene that he was in. So
he was great in American Horror Story when he had his little bit parts here and there, and I mean to this day I still hold his one episode on Walking Dead with really, really high acclaim because. Like, it was just him and Lenny James pretty much the whole episode, and they killed it.
Yeah.
So, by any chance, you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy. Have you watched any of the, like, little mini I Am Groot things on Disney Plus? Because I did binge watch all 5 or 6.
That's basically the only Disney MCU thing that they've released that I haven't watched.
There was like 2 of them that I giggled at, and then the other 3, I think there was 5 of them where I was just like, I get it. It's really for kids, but yeah, there was a couple things I did laugh at. So it was Guardians the best MCU you've seen this? Yeah, I mean, what else has there been? Ant-Man and then Wakanda Forever, right? Those are
like Wakanda I think came out last year, but I didn't see it until this year. Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think I saw Ant-Man too since then, and it wasn't great, but I don't think it deserves like the lowest rating. Like it holds among all of the MCU films that have been released so far. So I don't know. I mean, I can definitely see that. I think superhero fatigue is setting in. Especially with. Marvel, DC, things like The Boys and Invincible on Prime, Netflix trying to throw out a bunch of stuff that's failing and, ending it.
I think losing all the really big names from the phase 1 of MCU, like losing the pillars of MCU, I think is going to... They're still going to be successful, but it's just not going to reach the same heights.
Well, I don't know if they necessarily had a clear vision for where they were going when they finished the first Avengers. But, they gave us an idea of where they were heading in Thanos. And, I mean, even then, if it was a couple of more years later till they actually paved out, we have phases, and that was phase 1, and this is phase 2 and phase 3. Phase 4 had no fucking through line. Like, the one through line it was like, we're going to do a couple of movies with people who haven't left, but now we have to introduce a whole bunch of new characters. And to go along with that, they released, for the first 2 or 3 years? Like, a fucking show every 3 months?
Yeah.
And now, we'll see where the fuck it's going because of the trial. But, phase 5, going all in on the multiverse and Kang, at least they gave us an idea. But, again, like, there hasn't been an Avengers movie since 2019 to bring together all these disparate, separate projects. So, I mean, you went from having, what, 4 within 11 years to 4 within 14, going on 15 years before we're going to see another, big joint project for that.
Yeah, it seems like they're kind. I don't know. I don't know if they're setting themselves up for failure or if they're just trying to use as much time to maybe not overkill. I don't know. It's very weird.
And I mean, it's hard to
to
tell what's going on too. Like how much of the behind the scenes stuff, with like the CEO, Bob Chapek becoming the CEO, all the changes he made, and then getting ousted, and then Bob Iger coming back, all the arguments that Disney's got going on in Florida right now. It's hard to tell how much of the writer's strike, of the stuff going on outside of the MCU as a whole is affecting the MCU. So I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't ever want to see shit fail. I don't want to see anybody's attempt to make something for us to enjoy turn out to be less than worthwhile. So, I mean, I hope they get their shit together and go. I think The Guardians was the best one that I've seen in quite a while. But
really good. It's really, really good. And it has nothing to do with the other Avengers movies.
Yeah.
This third one, it's like a standalone film, and I think that's to its merit. But yeah, I don't see a line, and they come out with, what, 4 Marvel movies a year? I mean, they came out with Doctor Strange and Thor last year, and Black Panther Wakanda. Yeah. So they're coming out with them every 3 or 4 months. Ant-Man came out, and then Guardians of the Galaxy, and there's no...
We get the Marvels.
Connection.
Yeah, later on this year, too.
Oh,
what are we getting?
The Marvels. The Captain Marvel sequel.
Yeah. Is there any other shows coming out in the MCU on the horizon?
They were working on Loki season 2. But I don't know where they got in coming out with that because of the writer's strike. I don't know if they had finished it or not. Same thing with What If season 2, the animated one.
I did
too. Those 2 I think should be out this year. As long as they resolve the writer's strike relatively soon.
Yeah, which is postponing the Blade movie, which I'm not happy about because I really want to see what they do with the new Blade.
It'll be interesting, yeah. I mean, I love the old ones, but I do really like Mahershala Ali as well. So.
Yeah,
I heard Deadpool 3 is getting postponed because
that got pushed back. Because
they're ready to shoot it, but they can't shoot the movie with the writer's strike because they have to do the entire script as is, and Ryan Reynolds cannot ad-lib anything during the writer's strike because they would have to rewrite it on the set or whatever. Yep. That's how they do it, and that's kind of the vibe of those movies. That's what I heard anyway.
Yeah, that's So I mean, it's interesting. The one I'm really
can't make it.
The stuff I'm really interested to see is how it's going to affect television. What the fuck are they going to do? When the seasons that are out now are done, and you're looking to come into a slate of fall television with no shows with scripts before they fucking start.
Aren't we basically going to end up kind of like where we did at? After the first 6 months to a year of the pandemic, where they just have all these shows that have 6 episodes that they just kind of put that up because at least it's content.
I don't know, because I mean, I remember the last writer's strike affecting stuff to a degree, but I mean it
killed Masters of Horror.
That was just a writer's strike. This one, they're not even getting into the negotiations really with the writers until after the directors and the Directors Guild was already striking before this came up. So you have 2 major trade unions having to work and come to terms with the producers before any of that stuff can be fucking worked on. What I have heard, and I don't know if this is true, is that the laws are different over in Europe. So potentially, I think people have been courting about going and filming overseas because then they don't come under the contractual obligations that they would if they were working over here, which is a fucked up fucking situation because you imagine like, oh, we're just going to ignore labor strikes and go fucking do your show over in Britain.
Yeah, it creates a lot of issues. It really, but hopefully we get some. Hopefully it gets resolved soon enough because I want to be entertained and I need to know how many other Walking Dead spin-offs we're going to get.
Yes,
I need to know these things because I'm watching the final season of Fear the Walking Dead. And it is trash-tastic, and I wish I had taken a drink every time they said the word 7 years.
So, I think that pretty much wraps up this month. You guys have anything else you want to add?
No. I'm
excited for the next podcast.
I am sorry for the technical difficulties.
Oh, no, it happens.
Yeah.
All right, so because we don't ever know when everything's going to be posted, we'll hopefully see you back for the next one, which is our most underrated movies, and then after that we are going to be doing one that we're calling the Terrible Twos, which is going to be number 2s in a series. I think we're going to do a split, ones that we really liked, and then ones that shouldn't have been made. So thank you for tuning in again. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties, and as always, have a good night, and we'll see you back at the next one.
Thank you. Have a good night.